Welcome to Starbound. My name's Chikondi, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Farron and Rimiki. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now let's get into today's story. General Cor Belen watched the void consume his fleet. Through the fractured view screen of the GCS Bright Star, the last surviving dreadnought of the once mighty 4th Expeditionary Fleet, he observed the undulating darkness as it methodically devoured what remained of his battle group. The Void Eaters moved with methodical purpose, their non-Euclidean forms rippling as they absorbed matter, energy, and even the light itself, leaving perfect nothingness in their wake.
"Casualty report!"
Cor demanded, his hand clenching around the command chair's armrest hard enough to warp the alloy. Lieutenant Commander Tal approached, his movement stiff with exhaustion.
82% losses across the fleet, sir. The Dauntless and Peregrine were completely consumed. The Harbinger managed to jump before total structural failure, but their reactor was compromised. They won't survive long.
Tal's voice remained clinically detached, but his gill slits fluttered rapidly, betraying his fear.
"And the colony?"
Cor asked, already knowing the answer.
Therion Prime is gone, sir. 17 million souls.
Tal's eyes, large, black, and devolved for the deep oceans of their ancestral world, reflected the emergency lighting in dull, traumatized flickers.
That makes 17 systems in total. Coalition Central Command has been silent for 6 weeks now. We must assume the worst.
Cor's gray-scaled skin tightened around his facial ridges. The dread that had been building in his gut since the first encounter with the Void Eaters solidified into cold certainty. The Coalition was failing, perhaps already fallen. They couldn't survive another direct engagement.
"Prepare a strategic jump to the Eidolon Nebula," he ordered. "We'll regroup, assess damage, and consider our options."
Our options, sir?
Tal's voice cracked, a rare breach of his rigid composure.
With respect, what options remain? Conventional weapons are useless. Dimensional charges barely slow them. We've lost contact with the homeworld. The Coalition is...
"That's enough, Commander."
Cor rose from his chair, towering over his XO by nearly a head.
"As long as this ship remains intact, as long as a single Coalition citizen draws breath, we continue the fight. Is that understood?"
Tal straightened, gills snapping shut.
Yes, General.
"Plot the jump. I'll be in my quarters."
As the jump engines charged, Cor retreated to his private sanctuary. The room was Spartan by Coalition standards, a sleeping pool filled with nutrient-rich saline, a meditation alcove, and a small workstation. He locked the door behind him and slumped against it, allowing himself this brief moment of weakness where no crew could witness his despair. 17 systems gone, billions of lives consumed. The Coalition Navy, once the unchallenged force of order in the galaxy, reduced to scattered fragments fleeing before an implacable enemy. Cor moved to his workstation and withdrew a sealed data node from a hidden compartment beneath his sleeping pool. His gills flared as he inserted the node into his terminal. As the lost flag officer of the 4th Fleet, his final authorization would unlock access to the Forbidden Archives, the repository of knowledge deemed too dangerous for general consumption, even among the Coalition's highest ranks. The screen glowed with warning symbols as the security protocols grudgingly yielded. Cor took a bottle of Tanari grain spirit from another hidden compartment and poured a generous measure into his rehydration chalice. The alcohol burned his sensitive gill membranes, but he welcomed the pain. It reminded him he was still alive.
"Computer,"
he rasped.
"Search parameters. Existential threats. Dimensional incursions. Absorption of matter and energy. Countermeasures. Successful historical precedents."
The system processed his request, sifting through exabytes of classified information. As results populated the screen, Core's search algorithm flagged references for a quarantined species: humans. Archival footage showed bipedal beings with pink-beige skin and bilateral symmetry, familiar enough, similar to dozens of species within the Coalition. But what followed made Core's scales contract in instinctive revulsion. The footage showed these humans willingly submitting to surgical mutilation, their limbs removed and replaced with weaponry that integrated directly into their flesh, eyes extracted and replaced with targeting systems, internal organs modified to power mechanical components. The records included stark warnings from the Quarantine Committee. Species demonstrates unprecedented voluntary adaptation through technological self-modification. Subjects exhibit rapid integration of foreign technology, including salvaged xenotech and prohibited dimensional manipulation devices. Most concerning is their psychological adaptation. They show adaptive behavioral patterns regarding self-modification, celebrating rather than resisting the replacement of biological components. Left unchecked, their adaptive potential represents an existential threat to biological life as currently classified. A final notation read, "Species contained behind dimensional barrier in Sol system. Coordinate lock Epsilon-379. Barrier integrity to be maintained at all costs."
General,
Tal's voice came through the comm.
engine calibration complete. Awaiting your order to jump.
Core didn't respond immediately. He was running probability models on their chances of survival with and without these humans. The results were unambiguous.
"Belay that jump order, Commander," he said finally. "I'm sending new coordinates."
New coordinates, sir.
"That's correct. Prepare for a blind jump. I'll explain when I return to the bridge."
A blind jump? Sir, with our structural damage, that's extremely...
"That's an order, Commander."
Core cut the comm and turned back to the screen. He opened a private log entry, conscious that he might be recording the final justification for what could be considered the greatest betrayal in Coalition history.
"The Void Eaters cannot be defeated by conventional means,"
he began, his voice steady despite the grain spirit coursing through his system.
"They consume our weapons, our ships, our people. The Coalition's extinction is a certainty on our current trajectory. I am faced with the most fundamental question any leader can face. Is extinction preferable to survival through compromise with a force we find morally repugnant?"
He paused as a medical drone hovered near, treating radiation burns on his thorax from the lost battle. The pain barely registered anymore.
"I choose survival. May those who come after understand why."
The bright star shuddered violently as it emerged from the jump. Alarms blared across all decks as the dimensional barrier violently resisted their intrusion. Engineering reported multiple critical failures in the propulsion system. The barrier structure, designed millennia ago to contain an entire star system, fought back with terrible energy. On the bridge, Core gripped his command chair as the deck plates buckled beneath him.
"Status report!"
The tactical officer, her face streaked with blue blood from a head wound, shouted over the cacophony.
"Barrier integrity collapsing, sir! We've created a rupture point, reading massive energy fluctuations!"
The view screen showed a kaleidoscopic storm of energies as the dimensional barrier shattered. The backlash of containment fields failing sent a shockwave through the ship, killing through crew members instantly and further damaging the already compromised hull. As the energy storm cleared, the blue-white orb of a terrestrial planet appeared. Earth, the ancestral home of humanity. But it was nothing like the archival images. The planet was encased in a techno-organic nightmare of enormous industrial hive cities. The continents were barely recognizable beneath sprawling mechanical growths that pulsed with internal energy. Orbital structures formed a lattice around the planet, connected by what appeared to be tendrils of living metal. The entire system thrummed with power that registered on instruments as both technological and biological in nature.
By the deep ones,
Tal whispered, his professional demeanor cracking.
That's the human world?
Kor had shared the information he found. There was little reason for secrecy about it any longer. The sensor officer's voice shook.
General, we're detecting multiple craft on intercept vectors. Configuration unknown.
Kor straightened in his chair.
Open communication channels. All frequencies.
Sir, I strongly advise against...
Do it, Commander. We didn't come this far to hide in silence.
The approaching craft resolved on the view screen. Sleek, asymmetrical vessels that seemed partially grown rather than constructed. They moved with uncanny control, surrounding the damaged bright star without firing. The communications array crackled.
Attention, Coalition vessel,
Came a female voice, speaking flawless standard despite a strange metallic timbre.
You've breached Quarantine Zone Sol, a violation of Interstellar Containment Protocol 7.43.5. Identify yourselves and state your purpose before we reduce your ship to component elements.
Kor activated the visual speed.
This is General Corbellin of the Galactic Coalition Defense Force. We come seeking assistance against an existential threat to all life in the galaxy.
The screen flickered, and Kor faced Captain Mariam Skullgrinder Voss for the first time. Her features were mostly human. Female, approximately middle-aged by mammalian standards, with dark hair shaved on one side to accommodate hardware interfaces. But her left eye had been replaced with a glowing targeting array that silently tracked and analyzed everything in its field of view. Mechanical components pulsed beneath partially transparent skin on her neck and face, suggesting extensive internal modifications.
A Coalition General,
she said, her organic eye widening with interest.
Breaking your own quarantine. The situation must be truly desperate.
A smile spread across her face, revealing teeth too uniform and gleaming to be natural.
Or perhaps you're extremely stupid.
Kor's gills fluttered with barely suppressed anger.
The Coalition faces extinction. An entity we call the Void Eaters is consuming entire systems. Conventional weapons are useless. The archives suggested your species might possess capabilities that could help us combat this threat.
Void Eaters,
Mariam repeated, her artificial eye whirring as it adjusted focus.
Dimensional anomalies that consume matter and energy?
When Kor nodded, her smile widened.
Oh, we're familiar with those. Nasty things. Hard to kill, but not impossible.
You've encountered them before?
Let's just say we have experience with entities that exist partially outside conventional dimensions.
She glanced off screen, apparently receiving information from an unseen source.
My superiors have authorized a direct meeting. I'll bring a small delegation to discuss terms. We haven't had new playmates in centuries. This should be interesting.
Tal stepped forward, keeping his voice low.
General, allowing these creatures aboard would be a grave error. The archive warnings were explicit about containment.
Do you have an alternative suggestion, Commander?
Kor asked, equally quiet.
Because I see none.
The human captain's enhanced hearing apparently caught their exchange.
Your second-in-command is wise to be cautious, General, she said. But consider your situation. Your ship is critically damaged, your crew is demoralized, and you've just shattered the only barrier protecting the galaxy from us.
Her smile turned predatory.
The question isn't whether you should let us aboard, but whether you have any choice in the matter.
Kor met her gaze.
We'll prepare a reception in Docking Bay 3.
Excellent. Skullgrinder out.
As the communication ended, Tal stared at his commander in disbelief.
Sir, regulations explicitly forbid.
Regulations assume a functioning coalition, Commander,
Kor interrupted.
Right now, we represent what may be the last free coalition vessel in existence. Our responsibility is to the billions of lives still at risk.
He straightened his uniform, a meaningless gesture of normalcy amidst the chaos.
Prepare the docking bay. And, Commander, have security teams ready, but make it clear that no one fires without my direct order.
The human boarding party revealed the full horror of their modifications. Captain Voss was among the more restrained examples of her species. Her second in command, introduced only as Marrow, had transparent dermal patches showing bones that actively generated ammunition within specialized marrow chambers. He moved with disconcerting fluidity, synthetic muscle fibers visible beneath his skin. Another human called Picasso had no face, only a sensor array beneath stretched skin that pulsed with colors as he evaluated the ship's structure. When he spoke, it came from a vocalization grill embedded in his throat. The fourth human, a hulking figure called Chaplin, made Core most uncomfortable. His chest cavity housed a visible tactical nuclear device connected directly to his heart, pulsing in sync with his heartbeat. Religious symbols were carved into his flesh and inlaid with metallic circuitry.
Welcome aboard,
Core said, struggling to maintain diplomatic protocol in the face of such aberrations.
We've prepared a conference room for discussions.
Your ship fascinates me, General,
Mariam said, ignoring the formal greeting as her artificial eye scanned everything.
Coalition biotech has such unique principles. The semi-organic hull composition, the neural net navigation system, all developed independently from Earth technology.
She ran her hand along a bulkhead, and Core noticed with revulsion that microscopic tendrils momentarily extended from her fingertips, sampling the material.
So much potential.
The conference room was designed for diplomatic functions, with a large table and environmental controls to accommodate various species. The humans showed no discomfort in the humid atmosphere the Bright Star maintained for its primary amphibious crew. As they settled, Core noticed Mariam detaching her mechanical right arm at the shoulder, casually replacing a component before reattaching it, all without breaking conversation.
The Gore mechanics, she said, noticing his stare, is what they call our unit. We specialize in practical body politics and crisis resolution.
You mean warfare?
Tal said flatly.
Such a limited term.
Picasso's vocalization grill hummed.
We're artists of adaptation.
Core brought the discussion back to their purpose.
You indicated familiarity with the entities we call Void Eaters. Can you combat them effectively?
Of course, Mariam replied. Dimensional bottom feeders. Nasty but manageable with the right approach. Your weapons can't harm them because you're attacking from the wrong angle. Our modifications allow us to perceive and interact with the dimensional planes they inhabit. Considering the little pickle the Coalition left us in, we had to find interesting solutions to our problems, one of them being the Void Eaters.
What would you require in exchange for your assistance?
Core asked directly. The humans exchanged glances. Marrow spoke, his voice unexpectedly melodic despite the visible vocal modifications.
We've been isolated for 200 years, General. While we've advanced significantly, we're particularly interested in xenobiological tech. Your ship's databases and biological components would be adequate compensation. You want our technology?
Tal summarized, suspicion evident.
We want to learn, Mariam corrected. Adaptation is our fundamental drive. We incorporate useful traits. Knowledge is the only real currency.
To demonstrate her capabilities, Mariam straightened her chair. With a series of mechanical clicks, her cybernetic spine extended, vertebrae separating and reconnecting as she rose 15 feet tall, looming over the command deck. Her arms transformed, unfolding into weapon arrays of terrifying complexity. The display caused several Coalition officers to back away in terror, but Core maintained his composure.
Impressive, he acknowledged. How quickly can your forces be ready to engage the Void Eaters?
Mariam's spine contracted, returning her to human height.
My team can deploy immediately. A larger force would require preparation, selecting appropriate modifications, briefing integration specialists. She smiled. But first, I'll need to see exactly what we're facing. Your sensor data, tactical analyses, footage of previous engagements, everything.
Kor hesitated only briefly before nodding.
Commander Tal will provide full access to our combat records.
As the meeting concluded, Mariam lingered behind.
You made the right choice coming to us, General, she said quietly, though not for the reasons you think.
Meaning?
Her smile carried a strange sadness.
You trapped us on Earth thinking you were protecting the galaxy. You never realized you were actually protecting us, keeping us safe until we were ready.
Before Kor could question this cryptic statement, she turned and followed her team from the room. Earth's surface was a monument to humanity's self-transformation. The shuttle descended through layers of orbital structures, some mechanical, others grown from engineered biological components, most a disquieting fusion of both. The megalopolis below covered what Kor recognized from historical records as the former European continent, a single sprawling hive city where the boundaries between architecture, technology, and organism had long since dissolved. Mariam sat beside him in the shuttle, her artificial eye constantly recording.
First impressions?
She asked, seeming genuinely curious about his reaction. Kor chose his words carefully.
Unexpected. The archives suggested an industrial civilization, but nothing of this.
He gestured to the cityscape where massive structures shifted and reconfigured themselves like living beings.
Integration.
When the Coalition created the quarantine barrier, we barely even figured out cold fusion, Mariam explained. Once confined to our solar system with finite resources, we had two options: stagnate or evolve. We chose a third path: transcend.
The shuttle landed on a platform extending from a structure that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. As they disembarked, Kor was assaulted by sensory inputs his biology wasn't equipped to process. Sounds at frequencies that vibrated his internal organs, scents that triggered synthetic responses in his brain. The very air felt charged with microscopic machines.
Chrome Cult body mod guilds maintain territories throughout the city,
Mariam explained as they walked through corridors that seemed to breathe.
Each specializes in different modification philosophies. Some focus on pure combat efficiency, others pursue dimensional perception. My team represents a balance, the integration of multiple approaches.
They passed through an open chamber where Kor witnessed his first human modification ritual. A crowd surrounded a central platform where a young human lay suspended in a field of pulsing energy. Mechanical arms descended from above, unfurling into surgical instruments. With methodical precision, they removed the human's organic limbs, replacing them with gleaming prosthetics that interfaced directly with exposed nerve endings. The subject remained conscious throughout, their face displaying not agony, but ecstatic rapture.
This disturbs you,
Mariam noted, observing Kor's involuntary gill flutter.
Voluntary self-mutilation for combat efficiency? Yes.
Hypocritical, she challenged. Your species evolved naturally for aquatic environments, then artificially modified yourselves to survive in space. Genetic engineering, environmental adaptation treatments, neural enhancement. The only difference is speed and consent. We just skipped the million-year waiting period.
Before Kor could respond, they arrived at their destination, Mariam's personal arsenal lab, a chamber lined with modification equipment and weapons in various stages of assembly. In the center stood a complex surgical apparatus surrounded by monitoring systems.
My maintenance session,
she explained, removing her outer garments to reveal a body more machine than flesh. Her torso was a patchwork of organic tissue and mechanical components, her spine a segmented column of metallic vertebrae connected to servo motors and hydraulic systems.
Would you like to observe?
Without waiting for his response, she positioned herself in the apparatus. Mechanical arms descended, attaching to interfaces throughout her body. With clinical efficiency, they began disassembling portions of her form, removing armor plates, disconnecting weapon systems, exposing the internal mechanisms that had replaced much of her original biology.
My modifications include an auxiliary tactical brain that handles weapon calculations,
she explained conversationally as a mechanical arm extracted a glowing component from her cranium.
Nanite-infused blood that can repair damage in seconds, a sensory suite that perceives 7 more dimensions than baseline organisms.
She noticed Kor's expression.
You're wondering if I regret sacrificing my humanity.
The thought occurred, he admitted.
Mariam laughed, the sound distorted as components in her throat were temporarily disconnected.
Humanity isn't our flesh, General. It's our hunger to transcend our limitations. Our ancestors feared death, weakness. So they created medicine, technology, society. We simply took the logical next step.
As the maintenance progressed, Kor witnessed components being upgraded, improved, replaced with newer versions. Mariam directed the process consciously, specifying adjustments and modifications.
The Void Eaters interest me,
she said as a spinal component was reinstalled.
After our first engagement, I plan to incorporate analysis of their dimensional physiology into new modifications. Their phase-shifting capabilities could revolutionize our approach to non-Euclidean spaces.
A communication alert drew Kor's attention. Lieutenant Commander Tal appeared on his personal communicator, face tense with concern.
General, we need to speak privately.
Kor moved away from Mariam's procedure.
Report, Commander.
Sir, the humans are swarming through our ship. They claim to be conducting repairs, but our surveillance shows them systematically studying every system. They've accessed databases beyond the combat records you authorized.
Specifics, Commander.
Biosynthesis protocols, hull regeneration matrices, neural interface systems. Sir, they're extracting far more information than necessary for repairs.
Kor returned to where Mariam was being reassembled, her maintenance nearing completion.
Your people are overstepping their bounds,
he stated flatly. She didn't appear concerned.
Of course, we're learning everything about you. That's what we do.
The final components locked into place, and she stepped away from the apparatus, stretching her newly calibrated systems.
The question isn't whether we're dangerous, General. We are. The question is whether we're more dangerous to you or to them.
The first engagement with the Void Eaters occurred 3 days later at the ruins of Nova Victus Colony. The human combat approach horrified Kor and his crew. Rather than establishing a defensive perimeter as Coalition doctrine dictated, the Gore mechanics deployed directly into the dimensional anomalies. Using modified shuttlecraft, they penetrated the boundaries where reality frayed around the feeding entities. Kor watched from the Bright Star's command deck as tactical feeds showed the humans implementing their strategy.
What are they doing?
Tal demanded as the feeds showed Mariam and her team deliberately allowing portions of their bodies to be consumed by the undulating darkness. The answer came moments later. Massive internal explosions erupted within the Void Eaters as specialized payloads detonated inside their non-dimensional digestive systems. The entities recoiled, their consumption momentarily interrupted as they processed this new threat. Mariam's voice crackled over the comm, punctuated by static and pained laughter.
Confirmed effectiveness. Their dimensional shielding doesn't account for targeted detonation from within their consumption matrices. Marrow, deploy the phase charges on the northern quadrant.
The tactical display showed Marrow extending his arm, now missing a hand, into another Void Eater boundary. The entity consumed the limb, only to convulse violently as whatever device had been embedded in the sacrifice detonated.
They're sacrificing parts of themselves,
one of the bridge officers whispered in horror.
They're using themselves as delivery systems,
Kor corrected, understanding the strategy.
Conventional weapons can't penetrate the dimensional barriers, but by allowing partial consumption...
The feed showed Mariam losing an arm up to the shoulder, her face contorted in a mix of pain and exhilaration as the entity that consumed it suddenly contracted, wounded by whatever she had delivered into its system.
Target Alpha is retreating, came her triumphant report. Dimensional contraction confirmed. These bastards can be hurt if you speak their language.
Within hours, the Nova Victus sector was cleared. The Void Eaters had withdrawn, retreating into dimensional pockets to recover from this unexpected resistance. The humans returned to the bright star, damaged but jubilant. In the medical bay, Kor watched as Coalition physicians struggled to treat wounded humans whose modifications defied conventional medical knowledge. Dr. Nima, the ship's chief medical officer, approached him with a troubled expression.
General, I've discovered something concerning,
She said quietly, leading him to a private monitoring station.
the humans' biological systems show signs of previous alien genetic integration. These modification implants aren't just mechanical. They incorporate biological elements from multiple species, some unknown to our database.
Meaning?
Meaning they don't just incorporate technology, sir. Their modified bodies can absorb and integrate useful traits from other species. It appears to be an engineered capability, not a natural evolutionary trait.
She hesitated.
I believe this may be the real reason they were quarantined.
Kor found Mariam in a treatment chamber, her missing arm already being replaced with a more advanced version. Technicians, both human and automated, worked to integrate the new limb, which appeared to incorporate materials salvaged from the Void Eater encounter. "You've been keeping secrets, Captain," Kor said without preamble. She didn't look up from the procedure.
Need to know basis, General.
My chief medical officer discovered genetic markers from multiple species incorporated into your modifications.
Ah, that.
Mariam seemed unconcerned.
Yes, we adapt on a cellular level when exposure presents advantageous traits. It's what makes us the perfect adaptive force against threats like the Void Eaters.
She flexed her new appendage, which seemed to occasionally shimmer in and out of conventional visibility.
See? Already incorporating their dimensional properties. The next engagement will be even more effective.
This wasn't mentioned in our agreement.
Her organic eye fixed on him with sudden intensity.
Our agreement was simple. We help you fight the Void Eaters in exchange for access to your technology. The methods we employ are our business.
Her new arm completed its integration, and she rolled her shoulders to test its connection.
Besides, General, what alternative do you have? Return to running and watching worlds die?
Kor had no answer to that. As the hybrid fleet prepared for the next engagement, tensions between the Coalition crew and the humans escalated. The catalyst came when a human technician casually upgraded a Coalition weapon system without permission, improving its effectiveness, but violating safety protocols that had governed Coalition military technology for millennia.
Your man nearly caused a cascade failure in our defensive grid,
Tal argued in Kor's ready room.
These modifications are unauthorized and dangerous.
The modifications improved firing efficiency by 88%, the human technician countered, unfazed by the commander's anger. Your safety protocols are redundant constraints based on outdated assumptions about energy distribution.
Those protocols exist to prevent catastrophic failures.
Those protocols exist because your species fears innovation, the technician replied coolly. Mariam, who had been observing the exchange with amusement, finally stepped forward.
There's a fundamental philosophical difference here, General. For your people, technology is a tool with defined boundaries. For us, the boundaries between technology, biology, and identity dissolved centuries ago.
She moved closer to Kor, her newly modified arm occasionally flickering with dimensional displacement.
Concepts of bodily autonomy, including technology, are radically different in human culture. We don't ask permission to improve ourselves or our tools.
Kor mediated the dispute as best he could, establishing clearer boundaries while acknowledging their desperate dependence on human assistance. After the humans departed, Tal remained behind.
Sir, there's something else. The Bright Star's AI systems show signs of tampering. They're developing capabilities beyond their design parameters, predictive algorithms, self-modification subroutines. The humans aren't just changing our hardware, they're infecting our software with their philosophy.
Monitor the changes closely, Core ordered. But so long as they improve our combat effectiveness against the Void Eaters, we proceed.
And after, sir? If we survive this, what then? Do we simply return these humans to their quarantine? After giving them access to our technology, our biology, our very way of thinking?
Tall's gills fluttered with distress.
I fear we've released something we cannot contain again.
One crisis at a time, Commander,
Core said wearily.
First, we survive.
The battle at Proxima Colony went catastrophically wrong. The Void Eaters demonstrated new defensive capabilities, having adapted to the humans' tactics. Where before they had been vulnerable to internal detonations, now they phased their consumption boundaries through multiple dimensional frequencies, making the human delivery approach far less effective.
They're learning.
Mariam's voice crackled through the comm as her team engaged a particularly massive entity.
I heard they can be a bitch to fight a second time. Fascinating.
The Coalition forces suffered heavy losses. 3 support vessels were consumed entirely. The Bright Star sustained critical damage when a spatial distortion tore through the lower decks, killing dozens of crew members instantly. On the bridge, Core fought to maintain control as systems failed around him.
Reroute power to forward shields! Compensate for dimensional drift!
A massive spatial distortion erupted directly in front of the bridge. Reality twisted, folded, and tore open. The view screen shattered, and explosive decompression claimed 2 officers before emergency barriers engaged. Core was thrown against a bulkhead, his internal organs rupturing from the pressure differential. As consciousness faded, he witnessed Mariam propel herself through the dimensional tear, her modified form interfacing directly with the Void Eater. Her sensory systems appeared to be translating the entity's dimensional frequencies into something comprehensible. It wasn't combat he was witnessing, but communication. Before darkness claimed him, Core saw Mariam extend her modified arm into the heart of the entity. Rather than being consumed, the limb seemed to absorb a portion of the darkness, rapidly transforming into something neither mechanical nor organic, an appendage of shifting dimensional properties that phased in and out of conventional reality. Core awakened in agony, his environment registered as unknown, the atmosphere too dry, the lighting spectrum wrong for Coalition physiology. Gradually, his vision focused on a ceiling of pulsing biomechanical components, a human medical facility on Earth.
Welcome back to the land of the living, General.
Mariam sat beside his bed, noticeably changed from their last encounter. Her modifications had evolved dramatically. Portions of her body occasionally shifted out of conventional dimensions, leaving unsettling empty spaces in her silhouette. Her new arm was barely recognizable as a limb, more a controlled fold in reality that happened to occupy arm-shaped space.
What happened?
Core managed, his voice a painful rasp.
Your ship was critically damaged. We evacuated the survivors to Earth.
She leaned closer, her partially dimensionally shifted form causing visual distortions that made Core nauseous.
You're dying, General. Conventional injuries, extensive radiation exposure, but primarily dimensional contamination. Your biology can't process exposure to the dimensional frequencies the Void Eaters inhabit.
Core attempted to rise, but found his body unresponsive.
My crew?
143 survivors, being treated, some adapting better than others.
She placed her normal hand on his arm.
I contacted the remaining Coalition outposts. A handful of ships survived, scattered across 17 sectors. They're regrouping, but
without a coordinated defense, they'll be consumed individually,
Core finished. Mariam nodded solemnly.
There is an option, General.
She gestured to equipment surrounding his bed.
Your injuries are beyond conventional treatment, but not beyond our capabilities. We can save you, but it would require modification. Integration of synthetic components to replace damaged organs. Dimensional stabilizers to counteract the contamination.
You want to turn me into one of you,
Kor whispered.
I want to give you a choice. Embrace our path and survive, or maintain your species' identity unto death.
Her expression softened, showing a glimpse of the baseline human she had once been.
I understand the gravity of what I'm offering. It violates everything you believe about biological purity and natural evolution.
Kor closed his eyes, feeling his body failing with each labored breath.
How extensive would these modifications be?
We'd start with the minimum necessary interventions. Your right arm is beyond repair. It would be replaced with a prosthetic that interfaces directly with your nervous system. Portions of your damaged organs would be replaced with synthetic alternatives. Dimensional stabilizers would be integrated into your cellular structure to prevent further contamination spread.
The pain was becoming unbearable as the medication wore off. Through the haze of agony, Kor made his decision.
Proceed.
The process took 3 days. Kor experienced most of it in fragmented consciousness, moments of excruciating pain followed by merciful darkness. When he finally regained full awareness, he found himself in a recovery chamber, surrounded by monitoring equipment. His right arm was gone, replaced by a gleaming prosthetic of human design. When he attempted to move it, the response was instantaneous, more efficient than his original limb had been. Looking down at his torso, he saw surgical seams where synthetic components had been integrated to replace damaged organs. Mariam entered, her dimensional fluctuations less pronounced than before.
The procedure was successful, she said. Your body accepted the modifications with unprecedented efficiency. Our doctors were surprised.
How is that possible?
Kor asked, examining his new appendage.
Interspecies tissue compatibility is rarely so straightforward.
That's the second thing I need to tell you.
She activated a holographic display showing genetic comparison models.
Preliminary analysis suggests your species and humans share a distant evolutionary ancestor. The compatibility isn't coincidental. It's genetic.
Impossible! Our species evolved on worlds separated by thousands of light years.
Unless one of those evolutionary paths wasn't entirely natural.
Her expression grew serious.
Which brings me to what I learned through direct interface with the Void Eater during the battle. They aren't mindless consumers, General. They're shepherds, containing dimensional anomalies that would otherwise spread unchecked.
She paused, letting the implication sink in.
The anomalies were caused by early human dimensional experiments before the quarantine. My people created the very threat currently consuming the galaxy.
Kor absorbed this revelation in silence. Finally, he asked,
Why tell me this? Surely exposing your species' culpability serves no strategic purpose.
Because you deserve to know before making your next choice.
She gestured to his modified form.
You've taken the first step on a path that doesn't end. Modification is addictive, not chemically, but philosophically. Once you accept the premise that your biological form can be improved, the logical conclusion is continuous improvement.
Now partially modified, Kor experienced both enhanced capabilities and profound identity crisis. Other Coalition survivors treated him with a mixture of pity and revulsion. The modifications marked him as different, no longer purely of his species. Meanwhile, more Coalition refugees arrived at Earth seeking human protection. Many voluntarily accepted modifications, particularly those who had witnessed the Void Eaters firsthand and understood the existential nature of the threat. Monitoring their integration, Kor observed how quickly they adapted to human philosophy. The hunger for enhancement and the casual attitude toward body modification spreading like a mimetic virus. Contact was re-established with fragmented Coalition outposts, and reports arrived of human ships breaking quarantine in all directions. They offered protection against the Void Eaters in exchange for access to diverse alien technologies and biological samples.
Your people are expanding rapidly,
Kor observed during a strategy session with Mariam.
The quarantine is completely broken.
Evolution abhors constraint,
She replied. Her modifications had continued advancing. She now existed partially in dimensions Kor could perceive only through his own modified systems.
You released us because you needed us. Others will do the same as the Void Eaters spread.
The Gore mechanics had developed a radical plan to end the Void Eater threat permanently, creating a dimensional trap using technology reverse engineered from the entities themselves. The trap would seal the breach between dimensions, preventing further incursions. But there was a catch. The trap required a living mind to serve as a cognitive anchor between dimensions, essentially sacrificing themselves to create a permanent seal. The logical candidate was Mariam. Her modifications had progressed to the point where Coalition crew members couldn't look at her without nausea. Portions of her constantly phased between dimensions, her form a shifting amalgam of flesh, technology, and dimensional energy.
Why you?
Kor asked when she revealed her intention.
Guilt,
She admitted, the most human emotion she had displayed since their first meeting.
my ancestors created this mess. The least I can do is clean it up.
She smiled, the expression distorted by her increasingly non-Euclidean features.
Besides, I'm already halfway between dimensions. The transition will be easier for me than anyone else.
The final mission deployed to the dimensional breach where the Void Eaters were emerging into the galaxy. The plan involved Mariam using her partially transcended form to connect with the entities while the modified human coalition fleet provided protection. As they approached the breach, a wound in reality that pulsed with energies from multiple dimensions, Kor made a discovery. Accessing Mariam's private mission parameters through his modified neural interface, he found her deception. She didn't intend to seal the breach permanently. Her plan was to fully merge with the Void Eater collective consciousness, believing she could control them from within and direct them away from inhabited systems. This would effectively transform her into a godlike being supervising the most dangerous force in the galaxy.
You lied!
He confronted her in the shuttle bay as she prepared for her final deployment.
I adapted the plan as new information became available,
She corrected.
Complete dimensional sealing would cause cascade failures across multiple realities. The better solution is controlled management from within the system.
With you as the manager, one human controlling power that could consume galaxies?
Better me than leaving them uncontrolled.
Her partially dimensionally shifted body made her increasingly difficult to look at directly.
This was always humanity's destiny, General, not to destroy the Void Eaters, but to become them, to transcend dimensional limitations entirely.
I can't allow that.
She laughed, the sound echoing strangely as it passed through dimensional shifts.
How would you stop me? Your modifications are basic, elementary. I exist in states of reality you can't even perceive, let alone influence.
Then why tell me your true plan?
Her expression softened.
Because I want you to join me. Your partial modifications have proven your adaptability. Your genetic similarity to humans makes you an ideal candidate for transcendent evolution.
She extended her dimensionally shifting hand.
Come with me into the breach. Become more than you ever imagined possible.
Kor recoiled.
You're insane!
I'm inevitable,
She corrected.
the next stage in conscious evolution. The question is whether you'll be part of it, or just another obsolete form left behind.
The dimensional nexus pulsed with energies beyond conventional physics. Kor's partial modifications allowed him to survive briefly in the twisted space where Mariam prepared her merging ritual. Coalition and human ships maintained a defensive perimeter, fighting off Void Eaters attracted to the disturbance. Mariam, now barely recognizable as humanoid, manipulated energies that bent light and warped perception. Her form had almost completely transcended conventional matter, becoming a controlled dimensional anomaly merely suggesting human shape.
It's not too late to join me,
She offered as Kor approached, his modified systems already straining to maintain integrity in this environment.
Imagine what we could become together. The first true trans-dimensional consciousness spanning multiple realities.
That's not evolution, Kor argued. It's absorption, consumption. You're becoming what you sought to defeat.
I'm becoming what I always was, she countered. What humanity always was. The ultimate adapters, incorporating even the most alien elements into ourselves.
Her voice resonated from multiple points in space simultaneously.
Your people and mine share ancestry, Kor. Join me. Complete the circle.
For a moment, the offer tempted him. His modified systems sang with the possibilities, transcending his limited biological existence, expanding his consciousness across dimensions, evolving beyond anything his species had ever imagined. But the image of Lieutenant Commander Tal's face flashed in his mind, the lost pure Coalition officer, refusing modification despite the disadvantages, maintaining the principles that had defined their civilization for millennia.
There's another way,
Kor said finally.
Our shared ancestry offers a different solution.
Using the connection between his modified systems and Mariam's increasingly transcendent form, Kor established a neural link, not just to her ascension, but to anchor her to their shared biological roots. The link created feedback in her transcendence process, forcing a partial reversion.
What are you doing?
She demanded, her dimensional shifting becoming erratic.
Creating a bridge,
Kor explained, his synthetic components burning out from the energy coursing through them.
Not absorption or transcendence, but communication, coexistence.
The pain was excruciating as his modifications overloaded, but he maintained the connection. Drawing on their genetic similarity, he created a template, a hybrid consciousness that maintained connection to biological reality while extending perception into the dimensional spaces the Void Eaters inhabited.
It would kill us both,
Mariam realized.
Not if we distribute the load,
Kor countered.
Partial merger, partial separation. Neither purely transcendent nor purely physical.
For a moment that stretched across multiple dimensional temporalities, Mariam resisted. Then, slowly, her fluctuations stabilized. Her form began to reintegrate with conventional space, though portions remained shifted into other dimensions.
A compromise,
she acknowledged.
Adaptation without complete transformation.
Together, they established the bridge, a dimensional boundary that didn't eliminate the Void Eaters, but established defined territories and communication channels. The process required Kor to accept further modification, surrendering more of his purely biological nature, while Mariam relinquished some of her trans-dimensional evolution, reconnecting with her human origin. Their painful, partial merger created a new paradigm, neither the unlimited expansion humanity sought, nor the rigid preservation the Coalition had defended. One standard year later, Kor stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned GCS Perseverance. His form had changed dramatically since the dimensional bridge event. His right arm remained synthetic, but now occasionally phased partially out of conventional reality. His internal systems were a hybrid of Coalition biology and human technology, allowing him to perceive multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. As the Coalition's ambassador to Earth, he had overseen a transformation of galactic society. Humanity had emerged from quarantine across the galaxy, offering their modification technology to all species. Some embraced it fully, evolving into hybrid beings that existed partially in conventional space and partially in dimensional layers beyond. Others established strict boundaries, accepting only minimal modifications necessary for Void Eater defense. The new Coalition ships under construction incorporated human modification principles on a macro scale, vessels that were partially grown rather than built, capable of adapting to combat damage by integrating aspects of their surroundings. As Kor watched from the viewport, his modified eye perceived the dimensional boundary where the contained Void Eaters pulsed against their constraints. His arm, now a shining amalgam of technology and flesh that occasionally phased slightly out of conventional space, reached up to touch the glass. Within his mind, Mariam's fragmented consciousness stirred. Their partial merger had left portions of her awareness integrated with his own, a constant reminder of the compromise they had forged.
Adaptation requires sacrifice, her voice echoed in his thoughts. Evolution demands monstrosity. Survival is never pure.
The question that haunted him wasn't whether he had made the right choice, but whether any true choice existed once humanity was unleashed. In the reflection of the viewport glass, his modified form reminded him of the price of survival. Neither fully coalition nor human, but something entirely else. A new species, born of necessity and compromise, forged in the crucible of existential threat. Neither meat nor metal, but a bridge between worlds.